Welcome, everyone. I'm Beth White. I'm the founder and CEO of MeBeBot, and with me today is Deb Ingram. And Deb, we'll have Deb do an introduction here in just a moment. But for those of you who are joining for the first time, we're trying a new platform, StreamYard, today so that we can have this session embedded within a live LinkedIn, which is awesome. There will also be a recording of this session available afterwards in case you have to drop early. And then just a few other little quick housekeeping items and updates. This is, I think, the fifth part of our series that we've been doing this year, the MeBeBot Roundtable series. We kicked off the year really talking a lot about a topic that's become very popular. It's all about HR governance and how to make sure your systems and tools that you use within the workplace follow the rules and guidelines set by your business, and really that you have safe, responsible AI practices in place. So that recording is also available on the MeBeBot website under Content on Demand. And then we rolled into a couple other series where we talked about ROI for AI. We talked about our clarity framework, which is how to decide what kinds of AI projects to work on that really lend itself well to using AI. And we've gone into some other sessions last time where we were talking about slowing down to speed up, how really good, thoughtful, methodical process orientation and understanding what business problems you want to solve is a great way to get that foundation in before you jump into, high volume types of initiatives where there's productivity output at the end. So, and then in this session today where I welcome Deb, first we're going to kick off with talking to Deb about, how she was able to leverage MeBeBot over the years. She's been our customer twice, and she'll tell you a bit about that, to really streamline some of the operational processes and efficiencies and really look at the way of work in a different way within the organizations she's been part of. And we'll also lead into a big theme of this roundtable, which is about the content chaos we have within our organizations. I think there's a lot of companies in a mode where they'd love to use and leverage different types of AI solutions and tools, but maybe their content is not in order or their database, hasn't been cleaned up in a while. Well, we'll talk about a feature within MeBeBot that we're launching, and this is our first demo to show that, where we talk about our Smart Search functionality. And Smart Search is designed to have you be able to use the content you already have, even if you haven't gone through that process of Marie Kondoing it, cleaning it up and organizing it and getting everything ready to go to layer AI solutions like MeBeBot on top of the information and pertinent to your business. So that will be a second part of this session, but without further ado, I want to welcome, one last thing before I welcome Deb, Humanity for AI Awards. That's a biggie. It's a huge initiative that MeBeBot has been launching and sponsoring this year. We're really pleased to have 3 independent judges. We have Zoe Walters, who is part of Empowered AI. She's out of the UK and has a really great following there, where she talks about different ways organizations can use AI to empower their workforce. George LaRocque, who's actually an advisor to MeBeBot and a huge thought leader. He's the founder and CEO of WorkTech, and they put out a lot of industry information about the workplace and the ways that the labor industry is changing, how people are using technology, what systems and tools do what. So his information has been incredibly valuable. And then Dr. Felicia Newhouse is one of our judges as well. And I had the pleasure of meeting Felicia last summer when MeBeBot was selected to be one of the companies represented at the AI-powered women's conference that was at MIT last year. And that conference is happening again, and we'll try to get a link to that conference in the chat as well, so you all can see how you could register to attend. Also ways to do it virtually if you're not able to be in Boston. So those are our 3 judges, and the Humanity for AI Awards is really our way to help shine a spotlight, frankly, on companies who are doing great work where they're combining the people and the technology together to really show that differentiation can happen. And one of the big area categories is around AI literacy and enablement. And that's how you're training and giving your employees tools, going through different educations with them, giving them ways that they can peer collaborate and share. So if you have some of those stories that are successful happening within your workplace, fill out the nomination form. That's one category. The second category is all about AI implementations. So have you taken a tool or a solution, perhaps even something from a different vendor, and implemented that software where you're actually able to see measurable results? Well, tell us about it, because people want to learn about your success in implementing AI within your workplace. So that's category 2. And then category 3 is really pertaining to our first of the year January kickoff roundtable around AI governance. This is really, frankly, the foundation, if you ask me. In order for people to understand that they can leverage AI in the workplace, they need to have a little bit of guidelines from the business as to how to safely use AI. What does it mean? What kind of information can I share with AI? Are there review processes that I have to go through within the organization? What systems are safe and maybe not approved yet? So if you have stories of how your organization is putting some guardrails or ground rules around AI and AI governance, then that's the third category. And so the nominations are open until July 24th, not January, July 24th, which is, almost a week and a day away from today. So please get those nominations in, and I'm sure we'll have that link to the Humanity and AI Awards in the chat so you all can take a look and ideally submit. Okay, now without further ado, let's welcome Deb. And Deb, thanks so much for your patience. And we've known each other for a long time, and I would love for you to introduce yourself to the group here and share a little bit about your background, perhaps even how we connected and some of the work that you're doing today.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me as part of this. This was really fun to be invited. I don't even know how long I've known you, Beth. I was introduced to Beth through actually my sister-in-law, who is a CHRO here in Austin, Texas, which is where I'm based. I saw that we have somebody on the call that's from Austin. So howdy from Austin. I have been in different companies, really focused within consulting and technology, pretty much the whole of my career, which is 20 plus years, probably 25 plus years. I started out really in HR operational roles. And then as I furthered into my career, I got into more specialized areas. And I had the opportunity to be in a lot of different areas within HR. I mean, performance management, onboarding, recruiting, HR operations, compliance, contingent labor, payroll, and HR systems. And I think really what that gave me was an appreciation for how all of those areas need to work together and how they need to be supported by technology, and what a difference it makes to have an efficient workflow that is as automated as possible. And so that's really kind of spurred my interest in that kind of efficient working and how we can leverage AI to do things smarter, more efficiently, faster. We are all trying to do more with less. And so, and it seems like as headcount shrinks, the tasks still seem to increase. And so looking for any way that you can get some leverage is really important these days.
Absolutely. And you've always been a very creative thinker, but yet methodical about, how you rolled out and implemented MeBeBot technology and other solutions. And so when I think about when we met, I think it was around the 2018 timeframe. You were one of MeBeBot's early customers in 2019, way back pre-pandemic. And when we met, and you learned about MeBeBot, I know you were, obviously thinking about different types of business problems you were trying to solve, but, what caught your attention about MeBeBot back in 2019? And how did you go getting buy-in, especially at a time when chatbots and AI technology were in their infancy, in the early days of it?
People that know me know that I'm kind of a freak about Alexa, and I had to turn her off in my office so that she wouldn't come on when I actually just said that. I was an early adopter. I actually got invited by Amazon to be one of the preview customers to try it out. And I loved it. I loved just being able to ask a question and it would come up with all kinds of information. It was just so instant. And I'm big on, searches, Google, whatever. And it just seemed to me at the time, why can't employees do this? Like it's setting a new expectation about how we should be able to interact with the world around us. And so if we already have that in our personal lives, why can't we have that same type of access to information at work? And so really for me, this was very much about the employee experience. It was also about really teaching them some self-reliance. I felt that our team was often, tried to give this white glove service that just wasn't scalable as we were growing. And just the efficiency, just being able to not have to deal with those types of regular inquiries all the time. And when you and I first talked about MeBeBot, it was really clear to me that it wasn't just an HR chatbot. The questions that you already had developed within the system really showed me that it was truly an enterprise chatbot. So when I wanted to see if we could use it, I didn't want to just look at it as an HR chatbot. So I looped in all of the other folks, and actually even just within HR, it wasn't just HR operations, it was looking at it broadly across the different COEs. So how we could leverage it for benefits and recruiting and the performance management and all of that. But then also from a finance perspective, the applications that it has for helping out with questions related to payroll and accounts payable and travel and IT, absolutely. And so I got all of those folks in really early on to evaluate it, take a look at it, and get excited about it. And those are all the same teams that my team was working with on a day-to-day basis anyway. So it was a great way for us to just continue to collaborate. And really, I think one of the things that sold them was a lot of the metrics around this and the time savings that could be expected and the employee experience, because everybody's looking to improve employee experience where we can. So those were compelling arguments.
Yep, absolutely. And I remember when we met and we were discussing the rollout, one aspect that was incredibly important to you, and at the time you were at Epicor, and was you had people scattered all across the globe, right? And the corporate headquarters was in the US, but it was important for you to roll out MeBeBot globally. Why? Just curious why you put a real big stake in the sand there.
I've been at other companies or seen where a lot of times people think, oh, well, I'll roll it out to the US, then we'll just expand to other countries. And I really don't feel that excluding other countries sends the right message. I would really rather be able to launch something that everyone can use and really continue to foster that sense of inclusivity and belonging. And so that was just kind of I don't know what the right word is, but just kind of a stopping point for me right from the beginning is we have to do this globally no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we did. We went live globally with the Epicor team, and employees in many different countries had access to MeBeBot. Yet there's still the challenge of getting people to shift their mindset. At the time, I believe everyone went to a general inboxes or ticketing systems and getting the behavior pattern to change, as well as driving adoption and utilization of a new solution and a new way of doing things. What were some of the things that you and your team did to kind of spawn that adoption and utilization and change management as well?
Well, I think first was starting with the support teams, the folks that were going to be the behind the scenes in the tool and whom it was going to benefit. And fortunately, once they saw it and saw its capabilities, they were pretty bought in from the beginning. They wanted to make sure that there was an opportunity to, lessen their amount of manual work that it took to maintain the system. And there was a little bit of concern of, is this just a way to cut my headcount? And really, it wasn't a matter of cutting headcount. It was, let's get you focused on things that are going to be more value add, that where they, really do require more human intervention to service that function better. So really getting the support teams on first was step one. And then step two was really how we were going to involve the employees. And I'm big on expectation setting. So we sent out some communications ahead of time. We had all of the HR teams, the support teams put in their signature, like kind of a coming soon MeBeBot. And then once it launched, we changed everybody's signature so that it was, have you tried MeBeBot? Have you asked your questions there? And so we really reinforced it through those mechanisms, through internal communications, any kind of auto replies that we had from some of the group mailboxes. And then the other place was people were just kind of used to going to the people that they knew. And so training those people as to how to give a tactful response back to people to say, here's your answer, but going forward, you can use this, and you don't have to wait because it's 24/7 and you don't have to wait for me to respond. And so helping them understand why it was actually better, that it wasn't that we were not trying to give good service. In fact, we were trying to give better service by taking us out of it as a middleman.
Yeah, and you guys did a wonderful job. I remember you had, involved other stakeholders across the business, from internal comms to other folks, to really help and getting that behavior shift to happen. And then the pandemic happened, and right in the middle of, after launching the solution, having it up and running, everyone was being sent home. And I know Epicor at the time had a very much of an in-office work culture, yet you moved everyone home and continue to support employees even in a greater way, I think, in that era with the use of MeBeBot. And as an outcome, there was a nomination submitted to the Stevie Awards, and Epicor won, with the MeBeBot solution as part of the overall award for best use of technology during the pandemic. So that was a fun celebratory time. But what did you learn in that time frame when we're in this world right now that's a little complex still? People are confused. Are we going back to the office? Are we still going to do this hybrid thing? Do we support remote culture? You all did support the remote culture, and then I'm sure moving forward to other companies you've been at, it's different. How do you see this type of technology helping kind of bridge the gap between that remote in-office kind of movement that's happening right now?
Well, I think that was such a disruptive time, especially for those of us that were really used to that in-office culture. So if you had a question, it just came up more organically because you'd see people in the hallway, or they were a desk over, or you were getting coffee or whatnot. And so we found just overnight, Teams became our gathering place. That was how people connected. Whether you were, sending the message through Teams, or whether you were connecting through Teams calls, that was just kind of the epicenter for how people stayed, connected to the company. And so it was really beneficial, very much so, that we were able to have MeBeBot embedded into that, because that's where people were conversing. And so just making sure that we had easy ways and flexible ways that people could communicate, even when they were working remotely, was really, really key. And so meeting them where they were, that was probably number one for us. And then being very, intentional and transparent about our communications. And, whether that was leveraging MeBeBot to send out messages, or about when we had changes to policies and so forth, we could incorporate those into the MeBeBot just right away. And we could respond to people's feedback on the answers that they were giving, so that we could very quickly, real time, update the quality of those answers, so that we were meeting their needs very quickly. I think those are really key. And then just, being flexible when people were working from home and they were balancing more with, family and kids, being able to provide those ways to give answers outside of the normal working hours was really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that was such a tough time. PTSD here, thinking about it, because it was pretty challenging. Well, let's fast forward to just a few years ago, probably 2 years ago, when you were at Mozilla and you were looking for, going into a new role. And I know that we've kept in touch all these years, and you had also perhaps seen some of the same challenges that you've seen at prior companies you've been at. So if you don't mind walking me through, you're at a different company. This is post-pandemic, it's post-generative AI being launched, and now you've joined the the Mozilla team, and you're seeing different things in need there. What made you decide that, there was a business problem to solve that potentially MeBeBot could solve? And then how did you go about your process in looking at other vendors, as well as MeBeBot to select?
Yeah, really, I found a lot of the same, business problems that I think a lot of companies face, of how do you allow people to get answers quickly? And so we've got, Slack channels or Teams channels or whatnot that people are using, but those need to be manned by a person. And so we have self-service, usually through company intranet and information, but those it means that employees have to have the drive to look up the information themselves. And so I think that being able to provide something that bridges the gap between the two, that makes it really easy for employees, was really the kind of thing that we were trying to solve at both companies that I was at. What was kind of interesting is I felt like I could have gone in with a bit of a bias because I was already familiar with MeBeBot as a tool, but it had been a few years. I had gone to another company in between, and I honestly, I didn't know what else was out there. And so I wanted to keep an open mind. And so I kind of removed myself a bit from the search. I let my team identify all of the vendors that were out there that we thought, based on what we knew our needs were. And we did a requirements gathering ahead of time so that we had very objective criteria. And then I let them kind of lead the search. I participated in the call so I could hear what it was that the other solutions offered. And then we used that criteria, and across all of us that attended the demos, we use that to objectively evaluate each and score them. And I'll also say that in that particular environment, employee privacy was really, really a big consideration. Mozilla is very much about allowing people to have agency over their data. And that wasn't just an external or lip service. That was just core to who they were, who they are. I don't work there anymore, but have the greatest respect for Mozilla. And so core to that was looking for a solution that didn't house our people's information and that allowed anonymity in the questions that they were asking, so that they didn't feel like somebody was trying to check up on them and find out who asked what question. So that was really key to that search. The other thing that we were looking to do was limit our legal risk for more sensitive type questions. And so one of the things that drew us back to MeBeBot was the ability to have both questions that have prescriptive answers as well as the non-prescriptive. And I wasn't there at a time where we could release the non-prescriptive. That was something that was really near and dear to me. But it was something that the company had looked at and wanted to put more thought into, just to make sure that there wasn't any, we'll say, kind of the hallucination or making up of answers. And I'll say honestly, a lot of that stemmed from one of the demos we did with another company that was much more non-prescriptive. And I won't say the name of it, and I also don't remember who it was. But during their demo, the question was asked something along the lines of, someone keeps stealing my sandwich out of the refrigerator. What should I do? And the answer that the AI solution came back with was, it sounds like you're in a hostile work situation. This is what you should do. And it was like, hostile work situation. Oh my goodness. That was a little bit of an overreaction. So we were like, nope, sorry, that one's not going to work for us. And so that was part of the reason why we had a little bit of hesitancy of, let's really make sure that we feel comfortable with the answers that this is going to deliver.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's one of the learnings I think people can gain by looking at different options out there, is they're not all the same. There's a lot of different ways to approach it, train models, etc. And one of the things I know you did differently a second time around, you implementing MeBeBot, at Mozilla, I think you approached it a little bit differently, right? This second round, because you want to learn from your your past experiences, right? So could you walk us through like what you did differently, having had that benefit of launching an AI solution to employees in the past?
Well, and I think this goes back to it being a different corporate environment. And I think that always has to be taken into consideration as you're planning any kind of change management activity. And so, one of those was being really sensitive to some concerns that we knew that this was a very savvy group technically. And so we knew that they were going to want to know the ins and outs of how this AI worked and how were we protecting privacy and what models was it using and this, that, and the other thing, because we knew that there would be this group that was going to be all on board, and there was going to be a group that would have a bit more, I don't want to say skepticism, but just a little bit of mistrust maybe. Mm-hmm. And so we pulled together, and probably, Beth, you probably haven't seen that to the degree that you had to pull it together for us, of a little bit of the underworkings under the hood, to help people gain that level of comfort with what is this AI solution and how is it working and so forth, to help with that comfort level. And so we introduced it pretty far in advance. And we also got to have the employees help with the naming the tool. And so that also allowed us to create a tool that had more, familiarity for our own environment. And it felt more like an internal tool than an external tool. I mean, it was internal, but it almost just felt like our own homegrown kind of system that way. I think that, from kind of a lesson learned perspective, I really would have liked to have gone live with that non-prescriptive option sooner and been able to demonstrate to the team that the way that it was set up was with adequate boundaries, that we wouldn't see the kinds of things that we saw demonstrated in the tools that we had included in our original search. And I'm just in general, I'm such a fan of, using AI where it makes sense to do so, and that there are so many applications that we could be, applying AI to. And I think part of that is just getting into that habit of just asking, is this something that AI can help me with?
Right. And that's another little plug for our Clarity Framework, which is available on our website, because it is an analysis of like, how do you go about thinking through, is this something AI could help us with? There's a lot of, it's not perfect for everything. There's certain, scenarios where it's just maybe, not at the maturity to trust it to do X, Y, and Z, but it's great at doing, for example, the employee support and search to support questions and AI communications and sentiment surveys and different things like that. So I know there's a lot of talk about agents, and we do use agents within our own product, but having them be observable and be able to understand how you're orchestrating those agents is key. And I think you brought up a really good point, Deb. When the Mozilla team was looking at MeBeBot, they did ask all the great questions, like, how does this really work? What are you doing? How's it producing answers? And we love that, because we that's part of our DNA, is helping people have explainable AI, understanding what's beneath the surface, how do the different parts and pieces work, because we like to think we help upskill our customers as well, and teaching them about AI models and training, and why there's humans in the loop of the supervision of AI, and things you can do to tune a solution to make it perform better. So you all were gracious to want to have all that information, and we're always happy to share, because I think it gives and builds trust, right? Which is what people need to adopt and embrace AI solutions. So it was a very positive experience, obviously working with you a second go around. And as we kind of wrap up this portion of the session, if you were, talking to people who are out there, thinking about AI solutions at their workplace, there's lots of different conversations happening. Some are just stalling and nothing's getting done. And some people are trying and maybe getting frustrated, and others have had some small successes. But are there any kind of nuggets of words of wisdom that you would like to share, of having really been one of the foremost, early adopters of this type of technology within a workplace?
It's funny because I don't even think of myself as being as leveraging AI as much as I would like to, and yet I have implemented an AI tool twice. But I think my biggest advice would just be to stay curious. Don't be intimidated. Most of us are exactly in the same place. There's still so much that I have yet to uncover. In my current company, I just started working for a company called ZS Associates, and they just did an HR AI hackathon, and the solutions that they have come up with have just been mind blowing. And I so appreciate the curiosity and the ingenuity, and just that asking the question, could AI do this? So I just encourage people to just keep asking that question, and take any opportunities you have to learn and dig in, and then share what you learn with others.
I think that's wonderful advice. I love the word curiosity, because I do think, we have to almost get into the mindset of children. You have to be, what is that? How does it work? And look at it in a different light, and be willing to play and test and try, and, and make mistakes, but learn from it and try again. Right. So great advice, Deb. Well, thank you for sharing the experiences you had. I know people really love to learn from others as to, how they've gone about moving the needle, as they say, in companies to go into really workforce transformation, which is we're at that cusp right now where it's happening. And again, if it's happening inside your organization, I'll do a little less plug for the Humanity and AI Awards. Please submit your nominations. Frankly, we don't have as many nominations as we thought we'd have. So we're giving 3 prizes of $500 to every award: AI literacy and enablement, AI implementations with a human-centric mindset, and AI governance. So good chance for you and your team to win some money. Also get public recognition for the work that you're doing. Get an award to add to your LinkedIn profile. So all these wonderful things that you can get just by filling out that form. So I'm sure Amy's dropped the form into the chat so that we can have everyone be able to fill out that form. So, and as Deb's, here, it's great, because I'm about to show you something that frankly Deb hasn't even seen yet. So she's usually one of these people I run ideas or thoughts by at times, and she's been an early adopter of a lot of our newer technology. So it's something that kind of frankly came out, Deb, of our implementation of Mozilla with you last time. And it's that concept of, okay, if I have an AI solution I want to use, we've all seen, or if you haven't, and you've tried it and you left it, there's a reason why. And it's Microsoft Copilot. When a lot of people started using Copilot, thinking that they could use Copilot for every different types of level of support and searching for documents that have gone missing in SharePoint or OneDrive folders, or, if you're Google customers and you're using Google Drives, and maybe you're using Confluence as well, trying to find information that's relevant to the company has always been hard. And then when you layer AI on top of information, it's going to find things that are out of date, frankly, that may be duplicates, or there's a discrepancy in which one is the right policy to use, etc. And so what we've developed is a way to help our customers get started to launch MeBeBot, and we call it Smart Search. And so Smart Search AI is agents that actually go into your systems of record where you store knowledge content, and we seek out the information that's best suited for supporting the types of scenarios you want MeBeBot to support for your employees. For example, if you want MeBeBot just to support HR needs, that's great. We can train it and target it for that type of information. If you want us to, like one of our customers, use your knowledge that you've created for all your bank associates and customer service reps within a financial institution, so that if they have questions like, how do I look, what are the forms of ID acceptable for cashing a register or certified check, for example, and maybe there's a new teller who doesn't know how to do that, they can use MeBeBot. Well, we can train the agents to seek out the information that best suits the work purposes that you're trying to solve, and giving that access to employees to have a very targeted assistant ready to go for them is what we do with Smart Search AI. And so I'm going to give you all a live demo of how this works. And so I'm going to share my screen and go to this view here. As soon as I share my screen, I'm going to have to kind of move aside, or actually 1 minute here. Let me do this first. Okay. And you should now see a PDF, or I'm sorry, a PowerPoint with what MeBeBot solution looks like. And so what we see here is what our whole solution looks like as a whole. So we've been handling and working to be the solution companies use for all their different types of employee questions they have across the business. And so that's core to our business and always has been. But now we're adding in what we call what the search to support, being very targeted about how we gather information to power the AI solution so that it produces the best accurate answers from the most relevant content you have within your organization. When you're using our solution, you get valuable AI insights and analytics to see how the solution is being used, who's adopting it, so you can measure adoption. You can see the kinds of questions asked. You can see the types of information people are querying about, and get lots of different data that proves out the ROI value of MeBeBot as well. With AI notifications, you have the ability to send active push notifications to employees using our agents that are making it very personalized based on the employee. And those messages are sent through Slack or Teams. Now, AI sentiment takes it one step further. It's also a very personalized message to a group or team or even individuals that ask them for feedback. So again, sent through Teams or Slack. Reason we do that is that's where employees are living these days. Email is kind of over, and it's filled with just a lot of information, and employees miss those employee satisfaction surveys you send out because they're sent through emails. Click on a link, go to another product. This is in the flow of work, these AI sentiment messages. And then we have the ability to uniquely identify who are people managers to really deliver more support information to them based on their special role. And so that's all core to what we've had in our solution for quite a while. Now, what's new is this feature called Smart Search. And what Smart Search does is it says, hey, we know you have a lot of content in your company that you've created and amassed over the years. Maybe some of it lives in Confluence, some of it lives in a Google Drive, and you want to power an AI solution, but you're like, I can't get started because first I have to go clean up all these documents, figure out what everything is, organize it. So we say, okay, these are the right ones that we want AI to use. We want MeBeBot to use these documents. Well, guess what? No more do you have to do that work. MeBeBot's Smart Search agents take care of that work for you. So when we have connectivity to your systems of record, typically it can be through, an agent-to-agent protocol or API, we're able to go to your different sources of information, maybe multiple. Our Smart Search agents actually use a very customized prompt that we create and really models we've created to figure out what is that best information that's going to serve this business need that you've expressed to us. Well, we bring in those different documents, and then we go through what we call the health of the documents. We look at what's in that content. Is it duplicates? Is it stale? Are there conflicts? And then we say, all right, here are the documents that we believe are the best documents to provide answers to your employee questions. And that way you can be assured that employees aren't getting misinformation by accessing, for example, the remote work policy of 2023 versus the remote work policy of 2026. And so this is a super big new feature for us. And it really does help companies get started a lot faster in utilizing MeBeBot. And now to see how this works here. So what you're seeing here is this is MeBeBot's portal. So our customers go into the MeBeBot portal here. These are people like Deb that are working on the back-end administration of the solution. And the first thing that MeBeBot does today to connect and get started with customers is we integrate to either your SharePoint, where you can add different integrations from many of the different systems we support, lots of different ones that are even listed here. And so once you're clicking and making the connection to the Confluence, to the Google Drive, to the SharePoint, you can actually go in here too, and you can configure what different types of documents MeBeBot has access to viewing. So if you say, hey, our business isn't comfortable with MeBeBot, simply reading, that's all we do is we read the content in your system to understand what is the best type of content, you can allow us and give us just permissions to only certain drives or even specific folders. So again, we're one of the only companies out there that gives you this level of very specific, granular, we only want the information you want to share with us and protects your information. But again, we do a read-only process. And when we do a read-only process of your content, then within our Content Hub, what Smart Search is doing is it's going to produce. So now the agents are behind the scenes looking at the documents that you've given us access to look at. They're realizing which documents may be duplicates, which documents are, if we give it a parameter of you don't want to look at anything over 1 year old, where someone has not edited it or touched it or done anything with it in a year, we'll leave it out. Maybe it's 1.5 years. Maybe you want us to only focus on content to support bank tellers or to answer employee questions about HR. That's fine. That's all the information we'll search for. And once the Smart Search produces the results, what you'll see is the content items here of how many items MeBeBot looked at. And what the agent analyzed is that of the specific prompt we gave it, it determined that only 228 items were actually relevant for the bot to do its thing to produce the right answers to employee questions, which says we all have a lot of stuff out there. We need to do some cleansing, but instead of spending your time doing that cleansing, let's just work with what's good. And we've rejected a number of these documents. If we haven't reviewed something yet, if the system hasn't finished processing, it will be pending. And then again, if there's different things that weren't used, it would show it. And then we can filter it, and we can filter it based on looking for specific documents, by countries that documents apply to. And we also can look at the agent analysis. And so in this particular scenario, all I want to see is what's relevant. I really want to start with what's relevant. Let's just look at the information MeBeBot that has found that's relevant for my business scenario where I want to support employees with an HR solution. That's the prompt I gave it. I don't want any data that's old. And I think we used a year in this example. And so it's pulling back all this different information. And then as a business user, I have the autonomy. And again, this could be Deb at her company. She can say, I want to approve this as non-prescriptive, but she could also say approve it as prescriptive, or she could ignore it. If she says, well, you know, the document we have here, this training 8384830, I don't know quite what it is. I'm just going to ignore it. And I'm not even going to have it be part of the solution set that is using MeBeBot's information or using the information it's syncing with to produce an answer. And so it goes through and it produces this, and you go through a selection process. You can choose what country the document's related to. And then when you get to the part that the employee does, they're going to be asking the questions in Microsoft Teams over here, like, how do I, as a new manager, how do I coach employees on their performance? I asked that question in the session. And again, MeBeBot's going back to the knowledge articles that you've given us access to use, again, based on these smart search results. And it says, for coaching, employee performance, here are some of the principles that we believe and hold dearly as a company. And if you want to see reference information, this answer wasn't just generated by finding information on the World Wide Web. No, it is generated by using your documents, generating an answer to information that's perhaps using several different documents to get to a very succinct answer to a question. What's also wonderful is MeBeBot has the ability to give the employee access to, was this helpful? They can say yes, that actually influences additional training in the future of our solution. However, if they say no, they aren't just left hanging, right? They have the ability to escalate the issue directly from MeBeBot to different types of systems and tools that you have available for employees. Perhaps you have, US benefits is an inbox. General HR questions go into a Jira ticketing queue. IT questions go into a Jira ticketing queue. So perhaps this is more of a general HR question. I can hit submit, and then that becomes an answer that a person will respond back to the individual based on where this question was directed, the not helpful. And we track those statistics. You get visibility in your product to see what's working and what's not working from employees getting answers to questions within our dashboard. So lots of valuable information, lots of great things that Smart Search is going to do. We were here to introduce you to Smart Search, but as you can see, you can also see this valuable data that MeBeBot produces. Every time employees are asking questions, you're able to see what's happening by country, how many are getting asked, different countries, what kinds of questions are being answered. And when that employee said something was not helpful, it's part of the process to be able to see the results so you can continue to understand, well, if this answer about I'm a new manager, how do I coach employees isn't helpful, perhaps there's one of these documents that needs updating. So it's considered like a circular loop. It's not only using your content, but it also may be surfacing content that needs a second set of eyes to be reviewing it, because perhaps there's information that needs updating. So you can think of it as really helping you process your content management as well. So I know that was a lot, and I hope you all stayed with the flow here while I was going through our new Smart Search. We're super excited to have this as part of our solution for MeBeBot, and hoping if you want to see a personalized demo for your company, happy to set that up. And Amy can drop in a link to how to book a meeting. But at this time, I thought we'd see, if anybody has any questions out there. And right here is a question for Deb regarding, how do you get internal stakeholder buy-in. If you're having trouble getting, it was kind of framed as someone's having trouble getting buy-in from IT for something that they want to purchase for HR, especially in the world of AI. What are some of the things that you've done to pull in other decision makers or people that maybe wanting some information, wanting to know about it, and you had to go through that hoop before you could get a specific solution approved? What were some of your strategies? I know that's pretty tricky for folks.
Well, I think we kind of approach it from a few different angles. A lot of it had to do with employee experience, but a lot of it also had to do with just our support teams. And I'll say depending upon what your environment is, one of the environments that I was in had a lot of Slack channels. I can't remember how many Slack channels we had, but a lot of times employees would ask questions in multiple Slack channels. And so we had people that were monitoring those channels, and there'd be multiple people monitoring multiple channels because we didn't always know payroll questions might come into a question or into a channel that was about benefits or just kind of general HR. And so what we found was that I saw all of them. And so even though I wasn't the one answering them, it still took up my time because I was on there. And honestly, I wanted to make sure that the question got answered correctly because those were very public channels and anybody who was in there could see the answers and see who was asking them. And so it really did give us a way to consolidate into one channel that was a huge time savings for all of the support teams. And so when I just took a sample of here's how many channels we have, here's how many questions we're getting per day, here's the number of people that are monitoring those channels that end up reading those questions. I mean, that alone was just this massive time savings. And so I think, depending upon what, your environment is, what tools are out there, how you're receiving questions, whether it's a volume of tickets into a Jira or a ServiceNow or volume of questions that are coming into a shared mailbox. We've used shared mailboxes at a lot of places that I've been at, or even just things that are coming into a Slack or a Teams channel. You can't get metrics on that. That's really hard to get metrics out of, and to really understand where there's trends, where we need to, beef up the information that we're providing. And so I think, there's time savings, there's the information, there's the employee experience, just general efficiency as a whole that I think become pretty compelling arguments for leveraging a tool like MeBeBot.
Yeah, I know that's a tough one. I mean, in the sense that, you've got a lot of different stakeholders, especially who want to touch what types of AI solutions do. But your example is great, Deb. Giving them data to work with, for example, all the different Slack channels and what saving time would look like and what people can do with that time is a whole nother thing too that I hear people talking about, is making sure you express to the business, if they're not answering these questions, here's what we're going to be able to get done this quarter that we would not have, right? So excellent. So I see another question out here that is, someone's asking about, I'm observing people getting stuck and not being able to access the ability to be curious or play. What are suggestions you have to foster and get people to be more curious and to be more experimental?
I can jump in. You probably have.
That's for you. Go for it.
It's really fun. I think sometimes if you're not sure how to apply it in a work situation, start applying it in personal situation. You'd be amazed at how much it can help. And the more you do that in your personal, the more that it will inspire you to start looking at it from a different lens in your work life. I mean, my daughter may be moving to Hawaii. So I was like, does it make more sense for her to buy a car there, sell hers here, ship it over? Oh my gosh, did ChatGPT have some great insight for me and help me work it through and give me some estimates and whatever. And so I just think the more that you're just willing to ask the question and just say, all right, what task am I doing today? How might I put that into a prompt? And recognizing that you can be very iterative with your prompts. And the more you iterate on a prompt, the more you realize like how to go into it ahead of time. And I think there are a lot of trainings that are out there as well. If you search on that, some might cost a little bit and some are free. So I'd say just maybe spend a little time getting lost in the internet and watch a few of those.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I mean, great advice about lots of free. I mean, I learn a lot from YouTube videos that I find myself, and just another little plug, MeBeBot does perform AI trainings for different companies, and we do very specific projects for companies too, if you're interested. Another question came in about, did anything in the metrics surprise you, Deb? And what do you do with that information? So I know that was a really big driver for you when we all got started working with MeBeBot in the early days ever at Epicor, having access to that usage data. But if you'd like to share your experiences about that, that was one of the questions from
actually. One of the things that I thought was very interesting was to leverage the data that we had on employee searches. And so whether you've got like a SharePoint or a Confluence, we leveraged our information on Confluence to see how many searches employees were doing and like which pages they were hitting, which ones were the most, popular, et cetera. And getting feedback on how difficult sometimes it was to get to the layers of information, because sometimes there's just a lot of information out there. It's there, but how many clicks, like how many licks does it take to get to the center of the sometimes it's that way, even within a Confluence or a SharePoint, because things are kind of embedded and people can get to it. But that helped us see how many searches were actually happening in certain areas that led us to be able to say, all right, this is not a good experience for people. So we can see how we can save them time, because it's not just about saving the time of the support teams. It's also about saving the time of your employee population, where they could be spending their time servicing clients and other job tasks that they have. And so we kind of leveraged both, here's what we think will be support team time saved, as well as employee time saved, by making it the search a much more efficient experience. And so we kind of took those numbers, we took pretty conservative estimates of, all right, what if all of these searches we saved, say 30 seconds of time, or it's been a little bit since we've done this, so I can't remember exactly what we used but we took a very, very conservative approach to be able to show the number of like man hours that would be saved across both the support teams and our employee population. And it was pretty compelling.
Yeah, and I think, that plays really nicely into the last question we're going to take before the end of our time, which is about, how does Smart Search connect to content? And that's just it. Most of us have a place that we've been storing content, right? As Deb mentioned, they were able to do a query on Confluence and see those searches and how many things were never even being searched or used, right? And a lot of times there's just a lack of time or oversight over who's really managing to clean that information up. And so that's really the purpose of Smart Search is to do essentially the work of, let's use almost the 20-80 rule. Like, let's assume that 80% of the information out there has been out there, for a point in time historically used, but most likely somebody forgot to archive that information when it was no longer needed. So Smart Search connects to your company content. Like in the case of, Confluence, it's an API connection to Confluence, where we can do a read of the different, they call them pages in Confluence, or more like wiki pages. And inside other systems like SharePoint and OneDrive, it happens a little differently. It's through an API connectivity to either folders, the actual files, because it's more of a file structure, and same thing with Google as well. So there's different ways that we can connect, but it's typically through an API that just establishes that connection. And then once the smart search is doing its thing and the agent's working, it's bringing back into the platform just the information you need to focus on. So think of it as the deep cleaner of your content, only surfacing the best. So with that, thank you so much, Deb, for being here today. And I really want to appreciate everybody who joined today. Take a few minutes, fill out the Humanity and AI Award, so that you can share a spotlight on your organization as well, because we want to do that with these awards. And thanks again for being here today. And our next session is the award ceremony. It's on Thursday. It's going to be on Thursday, August 6th. And we have a LinkedIn invite out there on the MeBeBot page. Maybe Amy can chat it over as well. But this is the award ceremony that you're free to attend, even if you didn't nominate a company or yourself. That's fine. Join. It's a way to hear about, who are the finalists and who are the winners and what did they do and what are they doing. Give you some ideas. So that's the whole purpose of these awards, shining spotlights on people who are doing great work to combine the people and the technology together. So, well, thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate your time, and hopefully you have a great rest of your day.